Okay, you've learned about an adjustment layer in a previous lesson. I'm going to do the same thing, and we'll add a black and white adjustment layer to this. Pop those reds and And you know that the layer came with an adjustment layer came with a mask. You also learned that we could paint with black paint and poke a hole through the mask so that the layer underneath showed through. We also know that we can switch over to white paint and clear that back up so that only this layer is revealed. I want to show you a couple of different things. We're going to talk about a gradient. This is your gradient tool. Its shortcut is G. If I click on a black to white gradient and I make sure that the mask is selected, I'm going to do a linear gradient up in this option bar here with an opacity of 100%, and the mode is normal. And I'm just going to drag from top to bottom. And so if I hold down my shift key, I can turn that mask off or on. If I hold down the option key, I can actually just see the mask and not what it's doing to the picture. So where the mask is completely black, it's poking a hole completely through to the color layer. As it turns gray, it's less and less until it turns white, and then the black and white layer takes completely over. I'm going to hold my option key down and click again on that. So you can see it's in full color up at the top, but as we go down the picture, it gradually turns into a black and white image. I'm going to show you about another kind of mask entirely. This is called a clipping mask. So let's demonstrate this by taking our type tool and typing a word, and I'll come out here where I can actually move it around, and then I'm going to take and move this layer below, but this layer is locked, so I'm going to drag the lock down to the trash can, and that unlocks that layer, and now I can drag this one below it. So Utah is behind it. Now if I hide this one by clicking on its eyeball, you can see Utah. The only pixels that are on this layer are the letters themselves. Everything else is transparent, and that's because you see this checkerboard here. That means that it's transparent. There are no pixels here. If I turn this layer back on, I'm going to show you how to make a clipping mask. I'll zoom over here a little bit closer. You'll notice that when I get right, whoops, let me cancel that. When I get right between, if I hold my option key down and I get right between the two layers, you'll see that the cursor turns into a clipping mask cursor. And if I click, I'll zoom back out again, then this image is mapped to the pixels below. So that's another kind of mask, a clipping mask. So if I'm going to use a clipping mask, I have to have a layer that's at least got some transparency on it. So let's take this image, for example, and clip it to a clipping mask. First thing I'm going to do is unlock it, because the background is locked by default. You can either double click and give it a name, that will unlock it, or you can drag the lock down to the trash can. And I'm going to add a new layer, but I'm going to hold my command key down. That will make the new layer below the current layer instead above it. Now I'm going to turn this layer off for a minute and we'll just work on this layer. I'm going to grab my brush and I'm just going to paint. So everywhere there's paint, you see it, but everywhere there's checkerboard, it's transparent. All right, I'm going to turn the top layer back on, and I'm going to come over here, hold my Option key down right between the two layers, and click. Now I'll zoom back out again, and you can see that the image is clipped to whatever pixels are on the layer below it. So that is a clipping mask. It's a very powerful kind of mask. For example, I can add an adjustment layer, and I can clip it. See this little arrow right here? It says that that's clipped to the layer below it. So that means the adjustment layer is only going to affect the layer that it's pointing to right below it. If I unclip it, then it affects every layer underneath of it. So that's what a clipping mask is all about, and clipping an adjustment layer to a layer is all about. So just to show you the power of a clipping mask, here I've got a Photoshop file with 3 layers. We have this plain white layer and on the bottom we have a black and white image, but the white is transparent, and we have a watercolor splash. So I'm going to turn those on and turn that on, and then clip that to the layer below it. And so that's one way of blending different kinds of layers using a clipping mask. Here are 5 other examples of people who have used clipping masks that I found online.